What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little while since I last made a video, but I've been super busy working on other cars here. As you can see, we've got a pretty big car lot full of all of our stuff, and then I've been working on a car for somebody else, and then a couple other cars, blah blah. But welcome to part six of working on the 66 C10. And as you can see by the title, today we're going to start it, and then tomorrow I'm going to pick it back up, but that'll be a few seconds for you guys. We're going to be installing a new speedometer cable, a new parking brake cable, a new thermostat, and while we're in there, we're just going to go ahead and replace the thermostat gasket, or thermostat housing gasket, excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and try and hook up our volt gauge and our oil pressure gauge. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and start tearing into this thing. I've only got just about, I'd say, an hour of light left. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get into the cab here, and I'm going to start tearing apart the dashboard, or the gauge cluster here, so I can get behind it and disconnect that speedometer cable. I guess that's what we're going to start with first, and then we can go on from there. So let's go ahead and get into it. So upon further investigation, this is what I have discovered about said speedometer cable, right? So I guess that I got in here at one point, and I'm not going to guess, I'll tell you that I did. I got behind this gauge cluster and took it apart to replace the gas gauge, right? Because it wasn't working. Come to find out that when I stuck my hand underneath there and I took my flashlight, that there's no cable hooked up to the speedometer at all. To which I looked down and saw the cable running through the floor. So the cable's there, but there's no end on it. I just pulled on it a little bit, and it's not hooked up at all. So I guess when I took the gauge cluster out to put the new gas gauge in, I guess I never hooked up the speedometer, or hooked it back up. So I feel stupid, but that's okay. I'm just gonna laugh it off. And this is the box that I want to say new speedometer cable came in, but this thing is not new. Let me show you. Look at the logo on that. That is old. I guarantee you this is from 1966. I guarantee you it is. I got it from Rock Auto, and it's, Dorman's good stuff, but I guarantee you that box right there is from 1966, or about 20-30 years ago. I guarantee you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hook the already disconnected, coexisting, that's not the right word, speedometer cable back up, put the dash back together. When we come back, we are going to hook up I guess we'll hook up the volt gauge and the oil pressure gauge, and then we'll move on to the thermostat and all that stuff. All right, guys, I've been working on some wiring stuff for the volt gauge. So what I've decided to do is I've got my wire cut out to the length I need, frayed the ends, and add these little itty bitty connectors to the ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this is the positive wire here. I'm going to run this positive wire from the positive lead on the volt gauge to, I'm not going to be able to show you up close, but this is my fuse block right there, and on there is a portion called ignition unfused, which basically means it's not fused. There's no fuse on that portion of the block, and if I hook this up whenever the vehicle is on, that means the volt gauge will work. So I'm going to hook that up, and then I'm going to run a new wire. This is my black wire, and I'll run that to a ground somewhere. I'll have to find it either in the truck or in the engine bay. So let me go ahead and do this here, and we'll see you guys, I guess, tomorrow, or maybe in the next clip. We'll see. So in my volt gauge down there, I've got my positive wire ran right there. You can see that positive wire. It's going to the fuse panel. Now I just made up my ground wire / negative wire. I guess it's just ground wire. And this is the end that is going to go to the gauge itself. And this end here is going to go to a ground, which is going to go on this bolt right there. So I'm going to go ahead and hook that up, and then I'll go ahead and crank it over, and we'll see you guys in the next clip. So I have officially hooked up our volt gauge. So as I turn the key over, you will notice that we have 12 volts. Everything works properly on that volt gauge. Now, I ran, like I said, the positive wire to the part of the fuse block that says ignition unfused, and then my ground went to here. I might move the ground later on, but I definitely have to tuck these wires up and not so they don't get in the way of the parking brake. But I just wanted to show you guys that we now have a working volt gauge. All right, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut it off here, and I'll see you guys in the morning. All right, guys, good morning. It is a beautiful day out here. It's a little bit of an overcast, but we still got some blue skies coming. We're going. So the first objective for today, we are going to be installing an oil pressure gauge into this truck. So it's got an oil pressure gauge right now, but it's an electronic one. So I don't know exactly how this, I've never installed one of these before. So from my understanding how this works, on the dash itself, on all the gauge clusters, there's something, it says oil, and when you go to start it up, when you turn the ignition on, that lights up. It just lights up, and then you start it and you're good, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think once the oil level gets, it's either when the oil gets bad or the oil level gets low, that light will come on and tell you that it either needs to be changed or it's low or something. I don't know if that's 100% accurate or if I'm right at all, but I know how an oil pressure gauge works. Is I don't actually have it on me. Let me actually run and go get that real quick. All right, guys, so here is the oil pressure gauge right here. There it is, right? So apparently the way that this works is, one, you've got your wiring for your lights. I'm not going to be doing any of the lighting. I asked Dad if he wanted lights on these gauges, and if he wanted them to work, he said no, he's not going to worry about it. So the way this works is this goes in that little gauge cluster up there, and this is like a little straw, basically. It's itty bitty tiny straw, and what this is this runs straight to where that oil pressure sensor, I guess you could say, goes. And this straw goes basically, I call it a straw because it looks like a straw. It goes straight into the block where that sensor is, and when you crank it over and it's running, oil runs up the straw to the back of the gauge, and that tells you exactly how much oil pressure you have on your gauge. Now, I know how to install one, but on this truck, I don't know how to install one. So what I think I might have to do is I might have to unhook the electrical connection on the sensor on the block. I'll bring you guys in here so I can show you. And then I'm gonna run this into the dash. Yeah, run this into the dash, run the straw out the firewall and into that sensor, and then we'll start it up to see if it works. That's what I think I'm gonna have to do. But let me go ahead and show you guys the sensor down here that I'm talking about. All right, so we come down here, and that little sensor right there is what I do believe is the oil pressure sensor, or the oil sensor. I'm just gonna call it an oil sensor. But I'm like 75% sure that's exactly what that is, but I'm going to do some research and make sure I'm right on that before I go tearing into that thing. But if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm correct on that, I should just be able to unplug this and run our straw into there and hook the gauge up, and it'll work fine. But let me do my little research real quick and make sure that's exactly what that is before we go tearing into it. All right, guys, so I have spent the last hour trying to find two little pieces that will help us install the oil pressure gauge, and I do not have those two little pieces. I'll flash a little image up on screen of what I'm talking about. So I'll have to either order a new oil pressure gauge or find those two little pieces online somewhere and see if I can order them. So that means we're going to skip that, and we are going to go ahead and start messing with the parking brake cable, which is a huge thing that we need to finish or get working on this vehicle, since the parking brake does not work at all. So, and we wanted to start with the parking brake cable. We just want to work our way down the line, seeing if we can figure it out. So the parking brake handle, the pull brake, works perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it, and the release works on it as well. So we know it's not that. So my next step is to unhook the parking brake cable from the pull to wherever it goes to underneath the truck and install the new one. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so I've got the fronts complete, both of the fronts blocked off, got the truck jacked up, and what we're replacing is this piece right here. That is the part number. I'm not sure if that's the part number on Rock Auto or not, but I'll link all the parts that you see in this video in the description box below as per usual. So what we're going to be replacing today is this cable right here. It is from this point back. So in order to do that, we had to jack the vehicle up, put it on blocks, or put the blocks in the front, and we're going to take this cover off, and we're going to take this wheel off. So let's go ahead and do that now. So guys, we were just removed here our brake drum. There's a lot of brake dust on the inside here, and to be honest with you, I have not really ever taken this apart and looked at this thing. Our inside of our drum looks okay. Like I said, there's a lot of brake dust in there, and the insides of it feel fine. There are some ribs in there, no lips though, but I do feel a little bit of, I feel a lip, but it's not that bad. So let me put that aside here. All right, all this stuff really needs to be sprayed off. Brake shoes still got some life left into them. This one up front looks a little bit thicker than this one back here. So a little bit of play in there, not too bad. I see the cable, how it comes in here, and it goes right there. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to take all this apart, and let me feel our studs here, make sure they're stiff. Studs are fine. All right, so like I said, what we're gonna have to do, I'm gonna spray all of this off with some brake clean, and what we're gonna have to do is, like I said, we're gonna have to take this apart to get to our parking brake cable. If I'm not mistaken, there should be another parking brake cable on the other side of the truck. This is the driver's side, that's the passenger side, obviously. So I've never really messed with parking brakes on these vehicles before. Like I said, this is all fairly new to me. Drum brakes are not that new to me. I know how to take them apart and put them back together. So I'm going to take my time on it, since it's still kind of new to me, even though I know how to do it all. So if I'm not mistaken, there is a parking brake cable on this side, there's a parking brake cable on that side. They're universal, and you can use them on either side. So we're going to replace this one first and see if it fixes the problem. If it doesn't, we'll have to order another one and do the other side. Like I said, we're just going to do this part by part and see whatever fixes it, fixes it. And I think there's a way to adjust it. I know there's a way to adjust the shoes so the drum fits on there nice and snug, but I think there's a way to adjust the cable itself. So we might try that first before we take all this apart. So let me go ahead and see how to adjust, if I can adjust the parking brake cable, and we can go from there. So I'm putting this wheel back on because the cable, let's see if I can get this in there. The cable underneath there is working properly. I had Dad pull the, this off, pull the drum off, and Dad pulled the parking brake, and the parking brake cable is working and pulling the lever in there. So we're gonna move to the other side and see if it's doing the same thing on the other side. And if not, we'll replace the cable. Brace your ears. There you go. Wow.
Something came out of there, didn't
The
it?
whole thing just came apart. Well, there's a problem right there. Okay.
Is that a piece too, or is that something else?
That's a nut.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well, there is our problem. All right, guys. So as you can see, when we pulled the wheel off, we had a couple things come loose. This whole thing is loose. This itty bitty spring came out, and the drum, all the shoe for the drum is inside of here. So let me empty this out real quick. And yet again, I'm gonna feel inside this drum. I could see some wear around the sides, what I would call like ribs or rings. But I'm gonna rub my nail across it, and I'm not feeling any lips that are catching. So the drum is okay. I could re-spin them, but I think that this is gonna be fine for now. So the inside of the drum, I'm gonna say is good. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm going to have to, obviously there's no drum shoe. Well, these are the shoes, but there's no padding on the shoe itself, which is odd. And I did ask Dad when he was driving it, does it feel kind of weird when you were braking it? And he said it would lock up. So this probably is the issue on there. And also I had him slowly test the parking brake cable on this side, and it did pull that lever in there. So I think that this parking brake cable is working as well. So we might have an issue with the parking brake cable on the actual handle itself. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pause. I'm going to call around and see if I can find some brake shoes for this. Hopefully I can. And we will come back when I have new brake shoes, and then we'll take all this apart, put the shoes on, and go from there. So I'm back with my new brake shoes. And I got some brake clean as well. I went ahead and put a jack stand underneath this side, and then I went ahead and took this side off and put a jack stand under this side as well. So whenever I go to take apart that side and replace those shoes, I can use this side as a reference point on where all my springs and stuff like that goes. Also, when I was jacking up this side, this is a hint at a future video. But as I was jacking up this side, I noticed that the shock boot for the bottom bolt down here, well, I don't know if you can see that or not, or hear that, but that shock boot down there is completely gone. So we will definitely be replacing our shocks on the rear, and I definitely want to do some coil springs, front and rear and front shocks, but that's later in another video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tear apart this side and get all of that cleaned up and sling our new shoes on here. Now, I'm not going to show you exactly how to take everything apart. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and I'll link a video down in the description box below for you guys to go check out on how to disassemble and reassemble drum brakes. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so ran into a little bit of a predicament on the back side here on my brakes. I ran all the way out there to O'Reilly's and got me some new shoes, but I did not get any new brake hardware, which, to be honest with you, whenever you mess with your your rear drum brakes and you put new shoes on, or you put an actual drum on there, or a new wheel cylinder, you should go ahead and replace your hardware as well. And I forgot to buy some, so I am waiting on that to either show up today or tomorrow. I don't really know when it's going to show up, so we're just going to keep moving on. And our next step is we're going to replace the thermostat, and while we're in there, we're going to go ahead and replace the gasket for the thermostat housing. Now, I'm going to bring y'all in, and I'm not really going to show you how to do it. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of coolant's going to go everywhere, but I've got some buckets and I've got some replacement coolant to put back in it. So let's go ahead and tear this thing apart. It's a messy job, I will say that. I tried to get as much coolant in the bucket that I could, but still there's gonna be coolant that doesn't make it into it. All right, so I got that loose. I got to take these 2 bolts off of the thermostat housing itself, and it's not a 1/2 inch. So I gotta go get a new bolt or a new socket. 9/16. No. Probably should have gotten a bigger torque wrench, or a whatever you want to call it, socket wrench, but that's okay. Get that washer off of there, but it looks like it's stuck to the housing, so we'll have to get it off with a flathead or a pair of pliers. Now I know that all this coolant, not all the coolant, but some more coolant's going to come out of this block, but I'm about to find out how much exactly. My 2 bolts right there. I'm gonna set them aside. I have to clean the threads on those. I have to get those off with a hammer, or they? Oh, I guess they're not washers. Never mind. They're just part of the housing. I'm stupid. Now, I am going to have to whack that with a hammer so I can get that off of there. I want to move my bucket just a little bit. Alright, there's my housing. Alright, set that aside for now. Here's my old gasket, and here's my thermostat. Get a flathead and take that out of there. Alright, so the reason why I want to replace this thermostat is I was told in the comments of one of my videos, I don't remember your name, but I remember what you said to me, was that when I was working on the heat for this truck, when I was working on the heater for this truck, said something about the thermostat could be bad, or try replacing your thermostat and see if that fixes your heat, because the heat right now is like only lukewarm. And so I got a better thermostat. I'll keep that. Looks fairly new. Take the rest of this gasket off here and clean this surface up. Now here's the new gasket for it. Here is the new Motorrad thermostat. So this is a high flow thermostat. It was under the performance section of the deal on Rock Auto. Let's put that right there for a second. I'm going to compare these two. They look to be the same size. They look to be just a little bit different, but that's okay. Let's see. They're both 160 degree. I'll show you the differences here. The only difference really I can see is the top. This is the new one, this is the old one, obviously. So we're gonna go ahead and sling, I'm gonna go get a razor blade, clean the gasket surface up, and I might have to suck some of this coolant out of here to dry this section up so I can put my sealant on there, and then we're gonna go ahead and reinstall this. So we'll see you guys here in a second. All right, guys, so I got all this back together. Figured y'all didn't want to watch me put it all back together, so I just cut the camera off and did it all myself. So new gasket's on. It's a lot thicker than what that other gasket was. The other gasket was like a paper thin gasket that I pulled up off of there, and then this one's plastic. It's got a little bit of thickness to it, and I'd say it's about an 1/8 inch thick is what I'm gonna say. And put the thermostat in there. Everything's all buttoned up, refilled the coolant. Everything's fine, no leaks, we're solid. So that is done. The next thing that we need to do is hook up our oil pressure gauge. Now, before, when I talked about the oil pressure gauge, I couldn't find the two little pieces that I flashed up on screen earlier, and I'll flash it up on screen again so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I have now found those pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to unplug the current sensor, and we're just going to run the gauge into there. The sensor, and I'll just like plug off that that new sensor, or the wiring for the sensor. I'll plug that off and close it up so it doesn't cause any problems. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab all that stuff. I'm gonna clean all this up, clean my coolant up, and we'll come back and we'll take this thing apart and put our new oil pressure gauge into place. So let's go ahead and clean all this stuff up. All right, guys. So as you can see, I've got my tubing in. I went ahead and unplugged the sensor. Come in here. And I got this kit from O'Reilly's that has all the fittings I need. I ran my tubing through the firewall right there. That's the same plug as, or the same grommet as the power for my fan. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out here. We're going to take that sensor off, find which fitting fits, and officially install our oil pressure gauge. All right, guys, so a little update on the my brake parts, or my brake hardware for the passenger rear drum is, I'm waiting on my hardware, and it won't be here till tomorrow. So that gives me enough time to finish off the oil pressure sending unit, or the oil pressure gauge. And I finally got the oil pressure sensor loose thanks to my Matco vice grips. I highly recommend going and getting yourself a pair of these. That's the part number there, MLCJ7. I believe that's the part number at least. Or it could be CRMO, I don't know. But I highly recommend them. They're fantastic. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this off. Wow, look at that thing. That is original to the truck. And there's no oil coming out. Maybe I'm low on oil, I don't know. But that I will definitely keep. See if I match these up correctly here. That one looks to be the same exact size. So we'll use that one there. And let me go ahead and get this all set up here, and I'll go ahead and install that back onto the block. And once I get it started into the block, we'll come back. All right, guys, so I got the new thing all hooked up. There is a lot of this straw. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait until I get the drum brakes fixed, and then we'll start it up, make sure it works, and then we'll cut this wire to the length it actually needs to be, and we'll tuck all of our wires up from the volt gauge and everything, make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll be good. But that is installed for now, and that will work for now. And also, like I said, this is installed as well. So the last thing we have to do is finish our reinstalling all of our brake parts. And like I said, I don't have my new hardware yet, and I won't get that until tomorrow. So we'll have to wait until we get that in to finish that right there. So guys, I'm gonna cut this video here, and in the morning we're gonna pick it back up, or whenever I get the parts in tomorrow. It could be the morning, it could be the afternoon. I end up losing daylight, so we're gonna pick this back up when I get those parts. We'll see you guys then. All right guys, so we're back out here again working on the 66. My goal objective right now is to get the the passenger rear drum put back together. I got my parts in from Napa. I just got back from town to pick those up. So let's see if we can get this thing back together, and if I can, that'd be great. If not, I might have some assistance arrive later today to help me do so. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright guys, so as you guys can see, this is my buddy Matt. You might have recognized him from previous videos. So we are installing brake shoes, but they turn out to be the wrong size brake shoe. The ones that we pulled off of there were 2 inches in width, and the ones that we are trying to put on, as you can see, are 2.8 inches. So they're just a little bit bigger, and we learned that the hard way. So we eventually take it all back apart. I go and order the new brake shoes, and we install those later in the video. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're back, and I have gone to the parts store because the brake shoes that we were trying to put on there were the wrong size. So I went to the parts store, got some more, and the guys at Advanced Auto were super helpful. Shout out to Advanced Auto in Thompson Station, Tennessee. Super helpful, got me some shoes, and I'm going to go out here and sling them on, and or at least try to, we'll see. And I'm gonna grab my light. I went ahead and made me a little cocktail to motivate myself, and yeah, let's go ahead and get at it. So I eventually quit the night before, and the next morning my buddy Matt showed back up, and we finally got the new brake shoes installed onto the truck. Lower this side down here a little bit, and we'll go ahead and torque all these down to spec, which I don't know what are, but I don't know what the spec is, but we'll figure it out. All right, we got the wheels back on the ground, torqued down, and everything is back in operating order. I will have to take off this side again because I have a new drum coming, but it won't be here till Monday, so I'll do that off camera. Not a big deal, but everything is back together. So now we're gonna get this thing started up, make sure everything works. I know my temp gauge works and my volt gauge works, but I want to make sure that oil pressure gauge works properly before we go to drive it and anything, and we can see if it gets up to temp and everything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and give her a little start up right after old Matt gets done putting new wheels on his truck. So we'll see y'all here in just a minute. Still leaking? Out of the can keep her running for a little bit, let her warm up. She's not leaking anymore on the inside, not leaking on the outside. We're gonna let her warm up a little bit. The housing's not leaking yet either. All right, guys, so there it is. So the truck is done for this video. So me and my buddy Matt, we tuned the carburetor just a little bit because it was running a little rough. And we messed with the spring, the return spring on the throttle linkage because it was doing some weird stuff. The pedal would stick and it would idle at like 3,600 RPMs, which is kind of weird. But the only thing I have to do before we can test drive it to see if the speedometer works and the parking brake works is get a new drum for the passenger rear. Once that gets in, I'll do that off camera and put the drum on the passenger rear. And if the speedometer and the parking brake works, we're going to come back in a short after this video is posted, and I'll let you guys know if it worked or not. But that being said, that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe for more videos like this. We'll be coming back for part 7 here soon. I do have a lot more we want to do to this truck. We'll see you guys then. Peace.